Nurses in our audience will know this sound very well. It's something that happens at the end of the life journey for a human being, and often nurses hear this right at the end. And we're hearing it right now. Do you hear it? It's the Liberal government's death rattle. Let's go.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
Welcome back to Bakes on Things, the first sip. Grab your coffee, grab your tea. Let's tear this thing apart from last night. It is, don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course, join the conversation about this below. Liberals have already done so in some of my other videos, claiming this is a huge win and the budget passed as it should. I hate to break it to you, Liberals. This wasn't a win. You see, yesterday in Ottawa, the Liberal government barely survived the closest confidence test of its mandate, one of the closest in our history, passing the budget by a paper, razor-thin vote of 170 to 168. And while the headlines are all trying to spin this as a narrow win for Mark Carney, anyone paying attention knows the truth. This wasn't a victory at all. This was a warning shot by the opposition. This was a government surviving by the smallest fraction possible. This was the unmistakable sign of a minority government that is now visibly on very borrowed time. Because the real story from yesterday is not the actual 170 votes that kept the Liberals alive for another day. It's the 168 MPs who formally rejected the direction of the Carney government. 168 elected representatives, nearly half of the House of Commons, stood up for themselves yesterday and said the budget is wrong, the spending is wrong, the deficits are wrong, the priorities are wrong, and the confidence in this government is fading super fast. This wasn't routine parliamentary drama. This was a political revolt by the opposition to warn. It was a shot across the bow. And the most damning part for the Liberals is that their 170 didn't come from real support for the budget. It didn't come from broad-based confidence in what this vision was laid out to be. It came from a patchwork of convenient abstentions by the NDP, a self-preserving floor crosser, and at least one Green Party deal so transparent it practically glows in the dark. Start with the two NDP abstentions, the MPs who abstained. They didn't abstain because the budget was nuanced or complicated. They abstained because the NDP likes to do this. They're not ready for an election. They abstained because the NDP once again wanted to avoid the consequences of truly opposing the government they keep propping up. Sounds familiar? We'll talk about that. It was the NDP's way of keeping the Liberals on life support without having to acknowledge that they were the ones plugging in the machine in the first place. But they aren't the only ones, because then there's Chris D'Entremont, the MP who crossed the floor like a coward less than 2 weeks ago. Not because of a sudden ideological revelation. We've seen what he said about the Liberal government in the past, including Mark Carney, but because he saw a political lifeline dangling in front of him and grabbed it with both hands. His floor crossing wasn't conviction whatsoever. It was self-preservation. And yesterday, his vote was essentially a prepaid installment on whatever promises convinced him to switch jerseys in the first place. And then, of course, we have the House of Commons' own Shabuzi, Elizabeth May. The Green Party leader, of course, showed up ready to deliver a no. She showed up ready to deliver then exactly what the Liberals needed. How did that flip? And it's obvious to anyone how it happened, with functioning eyesight if you have it, that something big was promised on her environmental wish list. Her vote yesterday wasn't about the budget's fiscal integrity. It was about securing a political IOU dressed up as a principled stand. We know we don't believe a word out of her mouth anyway, and it smells funny when it comes out. And if all of these things feel familiar, the vote trading, the whispered deals, the quiet promises, the procedural acrobats, well, that's because it is actually familiar. Canadians just lived through this, an entire decade of it with Justin Trudeau. He spent years wheeling and dealing behind the scenes to cling to power, especially through his dependency on the NDP. And Mark Carney, despite promising a brand new direction and portraying his government as the change from Justin Trudeau that Canada desperately needed, has slipped instantly into the exact same liberal patterns with his very first budget. He is governing the same way Trudeau governed: lie, promise, bribe, and lie again. The faces change, but the slogans change, and then the behavior never does. That's the thing. Once again, the Liberals are using every trick, every deal, and every backroom favor imaginable to keep their grip on power just a little bit longer. And, well, these three elements, two strategic abstentions, one self serving defection, and one conveniently aligned Green vote, are not signs of a strong government. Nobody can put that in the comments. They are the scaffolding that props up a derelict building after the foundation has already cracked. And that's the reality yesterday exposed. The Liberals are no longer standing on their own strength. They are leaning on whatever temporary supports they can find, which brings us to the heart of the entire issue, Canada. Minority governments don't fail the moment they lose a vote. They fail the moment they barely win one. Let me explain. Yesterday was the moment for the Carney government that would be that barely win one moment. A budget is supposed to be an expression of a country's direction, a mandate, and a momentum. Yesterday's budget vote was none of those things. It showed fragility, desperation, and an internal decay that can't be hidden behind talking points or feel-good press conferences, no matter how hard the CBC or CTV try. And that's why the 168 votes against the budget matter far more than the 170 in favor of it. Those 168 MPs didn't just disagree with a policy document. They signaled a collapse of trust. They signaled a rejection of priorities. They signaled that Carney's authority within Parliament is slipping faster than he thought. And they signaled that the government's moral and political weight is no longer enough to carry even its most important piece of legislation without scraping together support from abstainers, selfish defectors, and deal makers who just want one or two policies thrown in there. No matter how the Liberals try to spin yesterday's sort of win as a mandate, the reality is the exact opposite. This was the day Canadians saw how fragile the government truly is. A government that commands real confidence does not need to squeak through a budget. A government that commands real confidence does not need those two votes. A government that commands real authority doesn't rely on last-minute political favors. And a government with real momentum, Canada, doesn't walk out of the House of Commons looking more relieved than they do confident. And here's the warning that everybody in Canada needs to hear. From this moment forward, after what happened last night, you really must watch every announcement, every spending plan, every press conference, and every investment supposedly being made here with absolute scrutiny. Because to survive what's coming, the Liberals will unleash spending like this country has never seen before. The deficit will scream past $78 billion. There will be no accountability for it. There will be media spin of epic proportions, and there will be very little real progress. Brace yourself for easy wins and low-hanging fruit. Think the major projects office for that, where the Liberals will obviously take credit for projects that were well underway long before Carney ever touched the file itself. The bottom line is this for everyone watching. Canada, stand watch. Guard your democracy. Because if you don't pay attention now, you will lose that democracy faster than Donald Trump could ever have taken it from you. The Liberals may still be in office today, but after yesterday, it's clear they're not in control anymore necessarily. They are drifting, surviving on procedural luck, smear campaigns, and political favors instead of legitimacy and direction for this country. And that's scary considering where most of us are. And when this government ultimately fails, and they will, whether it's next month or next session, political historians will point to yesterday's budget vote as the first sign, as the moment the collapse became basically unavoidable. The 170 votes kept the government standing. The 168 votes proved the government is already falling. Thanks for watching Bakes on Things. We'll be back this afternoon at 3:45 for your last word. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course, talk about the budget down below. It passed, barely. And do you think this is a sign that the government is actually more fragile than we thought and may fall sooner than we thought? Thanks for watching and have a great Tuesday.